Grammar Girl here. I'm Mignon Fogarty, and today we're going to look at why love means zero in tennis. But before we start, I want to unplug my Patreon just a little bit. Think of it like public radio, except instead of a tote bag, you get ad-free episodes, crossword puzzles, and most importantly, a seat at the table inside Grammar Palooza, the inner circle of the most devoted Grammar Girl fans on the planet. Loyal listeners are the only reason this show even exists. So if you've ever thought I should really support this, now's a good time. Go to patreon.com/grammargirl to sign up. That's patreon.com/grammargirl. It's almost July, and that means it's time for Wimbledon, one of the most widely watched tennis tournaments in the world. It's played on the grassy courts of the All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club in southwest London. The first Wimbledon championships were held in 1877. They featured a field of 22 men who were advised to bring their own rackets and wear shoes without heels. Balls were hand sewn with a flannel casing. The rackets were made of wood and looked distinctly like snowshoes. The event was so successful that a women's championship was added 7 years later. First prize for the ladies was a silver flower basket valued at 20 guineas. Fast forward about 100 years. In 2018, the winner of the women's tournament, Angelique Kerber, took home £2.25 million. That's about $3 million US dollars. Her racket was made of a carbon graphite compound originally developed for the aerospace industry. And the balls she played with had to match international standards, dictating their mass, size, deformation, and rebound. In other words, things have changed. One thing that hasn't changed, though, is the weird scoring system used in tennis. Let's start with love, the word that means zero in tennis. When a match starts, the score is 0-0. In the tennis world, that's called love all. There are a couple of theories why. One is that the number 0 has an oval shape, just like an egg. The French word for egg is louf. Say louf 5 times fast, and it starts to sound like love. Louf, 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 louf. Seems like a bit of a stretch until you consider the fact that we also call 0 on a scoreboard a goose egg. Sports fans have been saying this since at least 1866, about the time the first tennis matches were being played. Another theory is related to the expression to play a sport for love, as opposed to playing for money. This refers to the practice of playing a competitive game simply for the fun of it, not because you might win a prize. In other words, just for the love of the game. You'd accept a score of love and keep on playing. This explanation is suggested but not verified by the Oxford English Dictionary. The OED also notes that love has been used for centuries to mean 0 in other games, such as bridge and whist, the card game from which bridge is derived. So, in tennis, love means 0. But what's also odd is that instead of counting points as 1, 2, 3, and 4, in tennis, you count them as 15, 30, 40, and game. In other words, winning a 4th point wins you the game, provided you've won by 2 points. So, why does tennis do this? Well, one theory is that it's because tennis is based on a much earlier game known as jeu de paume, meaning game of palms. It got this name because players used their hands rather than rackets to bat the ball back and forth. In this game, courts were 90 feet long, with 45 feet on either side of the net. When a player won a point, they got to move up 15 feet and start the next point from there. If they won another point, they would move up another 15 feet. But if they won a third point, they couldn't move up 15 more feet, or they'd be sitting right on top of the net. So this theory goes they would move up another 10 feet. Thus, their progression forward would be to 15 feet, then 30 feet, then 40 feet, which corresponds to the 15-30-40 scoring method we use in tennis today. The second theory is that tennis's scoring system is based on the movement of hands around a clock, with the quarter hours, 15, 30, and 45, being progress points in winning the game. This theory is a little shaky because the third point in a tennis game isn't called 45, it's called 40. But this theory goes maybe it took too long for players to say 45, so over time it was shortened to 40. Once again, this seems like a bit of a stretch. However, consider the fact that amateur tennis players often shorten 15 to 5 when calling out their scores, purely because it's easier to say. So it's not unreasonable that the same thing happened with 45. It was eventually shortened to 40. As strange as tennis scoring is, at least the sport didn't retain the very strange name it was almost given: Sparrow-Strikey. That's what the originator of modern tennis, one Major Walton Clopton Wingfield, called it back in 1873. And why not? In Greek, Sparrow-Strikey means skill in playing at ball. Well, Major's friends loved the game and it stuck. The love of the game, not the name. Fortunately, that settled into a simpler name he also used: lawn tennis. That segment was written by Samantha Enslin, who runs Dragonfly Editorial. You can find her at dragonflyeditorial.com. Finally, I have a FAMILECT story from Kate.
Hi, Grammar Girl. This is Kate from Maryland. I'm calling with a FAMILECT. When my son was a baby, my husband would make different funny noises as he poked various parts of his body, like his toes or his cheeks, while one of them stuck. He would go newt when he poked his nose with his nose. So now, in our family, a newt, it can be a noun or a verb, is when you poke someone's nose with your nose. You can say, I'm going to give you a newt, and come up to them and poke their nose with your nose, or you can ask for a newt, or you can say it's, will you newt me? So yeah, that's a silly thing my husband, son, and my mom and I all say now. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. This reminds me of my favorite dog, a bull mastiff I had named Dude when I started the Grammar Girl podcast. And when she was a puppy, I very stupidly taught her to boop noses with me. Now, she was really gentle, but she would also get excited for treats. So it's actually a miracle that this huge, strong dog didn't break my nose by accident at some point. Thanks for the memory. Grammar Girl is a quick and dirty tips podcast. Thanks to Morgan Christianson, Rebekah Sebastian, Maram Elnagheeb, Holly Hutchings, Dan Feierabend, Nat Hoops, and Stephen Schapansky, whose dining room table is home to a giant Lego baseball stadium. And I'm Mignon Fogarty, better known as Grammar Girl. That's all. Thanks for listening.